So this will not be the Django Rule Part 2 that I originally envisioned. And frankly, I didn't think it would be over 2 years until I finally got to Part 2. And by the way, now might be a good time to check out Part 1 if you haven't seen it. And if you have, remember, I discussed having a chronic injury, carpal tunnel syndrome, in my left hand, and the great lengths I went to keep playing, and also to keep my income flowing so I could pay for surgery. My answer was to learn how to play another instrument, the dobro, and it was an instrument I could begin to learn by applying some slide guitar knowledge I had to the dobro. Well, this time around, I'm going to address an acute injury and how I continued to work in spite of that injury, and how that injury affected the way I play and practice once I had recovered. Anyway, stick around and we'll talk about some emergency options. So 2 years ago, actually I think it was 3 years ago, I was cooking. I was making minestrone, and that involves a lot of chopped vegetables. Can you see where this is going? Well, I'll just make this quick. I cut the snot out of my left index finger. It was bad, really bad, about a 1/4 inch deep through the nail and down into the nail bed. I'd show you a picture, but I'm not really sure it's appropriate, tasteful, or even allowed. Well, my old Boy Scout first aid training kicked in, and I applied direct pressure and wrapped it up. I should have gone to the doctor for stitches, but I was alone at home. I didn't think I'd be able to drive to the ER and keep the bleeding under control, so, Well, I finally got the bleeding under control, got everything lined back up, superglued, taped, and bandaged. And if you look at it now, you can't even tell. Now, I was bandaged up for about 3 or 4 weeks. But 4 or 5 days after I cut myself, my bluegrass band, The Crumbs, played an unplugged pub gig. Needless to say, everyone was surprised when I showed up with my index finger in a huge bulbous bandage, but I was ready to play. They all told me to take the night off, but I insisted. So how the heck was I able to form even a simple C, D, G, or A chord without my index finger? Well, watch this. Here's the C. I simply used the wrong fingers. Here's the G, and this is what's known as a claw hammer G. It's pretty standard, by the way. Here's a misfingered A, and this one is actually a fairly common fingering. And then the D is simply a D add 9, but fingered a bit differently. A bit awkward, but it gets the job done. Now, was it difficult to hit all the right chords in all the right places without access to my index finger? Well, yeah, but I was able to adapt quickly because I know how bar chords work. But more on that in Part 3 of the Django Rule. So, most of our gigs feature heavy soloing from everyone. Now, the most sensible thing I could have done on this gig would have been to lay out when my solos came up. It really wasn't that much of a problem to hit the chords, and there would have been no shame in passing on the solos. I mean, I did have a huge bandage on my index finger, but being stubborn, I insisted. Now, luckily, a lot of bluegrass tunes are in the keys of G, D, C, and A, keys which feature plenty of open strings. For instance, in the key of G, I rely on the open string G major or E minor pentatonic blues scale. And normally I would use fingers 1 and 2 as my bass fingering. But if you think about it for a second, you should realize that it's not much of a stretch to shift to fingers 2 and 3. And I'll be honest, it was tiring, and I wasn't able to play as fast and fancy as usual, but I did it. I got through the gig. Well, sort of. I only lasted 1 set. I let the band play the rest of the gig without me while I drank a beer. So what I learned from all this is that there are real-life situations which may force us as guitarists to adjust our technique. Just like Django Reinhardt, who played essentially without his left hand ring and little finger, I had to make it through a few gigs without my index. Now, I'm not saying I had as much to overcome as Django did, thank God, but I just had to be willing not to give up, approach the problem creatively, and learn how to adapt. So in the Django Rule Part 3, I'd like to share some chord and scale exercises which can prepare you to adapt and keep playing even if you temporarily lose the use of one of your fretting hand fingers. So naturally, by extension, Part 4 of the Django Rule will deal with continuing to play with a picking hand injury. Please like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you'll always know when a new episode drops, and feel free to leave comments or any suggestions for any topics you might like to see in some future videos. And 90% of my views come from non-subscribers, so please take this as an opportunity to subscribe. Every single subscription helps the channel out. Also, check out my other channel, Live from the Stairwell, and check out some 100% live unplugged performances from, you guessed it, my back stairwell, and more performances are coming soon. Also, keep your eyes open for String 'em Up Shorts, where I address various good guitaring ideas in under a minute. My name's Dave Holland, and thanks for watching String 'em Up. Have fun, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.